and any other financial institutions who the Treasury Department allows to, and approves to participate, that would basically allow a small business to go and get money in the amount equivalent to what their payroll and operating costs are for a period of time of roughly about 6 weeks. Those final details are being worked out. But the goal is to keep employees connected to their employers so that people aren't just having to stay home, but and not just feeling the stress of being laid off, but the uncertainty of whether they even have a job to go back to when this is finished. And added to that component is the small businesses who will tell you that many of them, if you force them to get rid of their employees, by the time they're ready to restart, whenever that is, they may not be able to. Depending on the industry they're in, it's hard to go out, find someone, hire them, train them, and get up and running. That could be another couple of weeks or more that most of these small businesses cannot afford. So we feel very good about the progress, what we've made. We think we really, I mean, we don't have a document to hand you yet because there's some fine details that have to be worked out, but we're very confident that we're going to have a proposal in time that we hope can gain wide bipartisan approval. And Senator Collins has been instrumental in all this, so we want to hear from her as well.
Thank you very much. Senator Rubio and I have been working with our colleagues and with the Secretary of the Treasury to devise a plan that would help our small businesses survive this crisis and ensure that the people that they employ continue to get paychecks. Every day, I am hearing from small businesses in my state that are on the verge of going under. The hospitality industry in particular, the restaurants, the B&Bs, the gift shops, the small hotels are being adversely affected by the virus, not because their employees are afflicted with it, but because their business has totally dried up. One hotel in Maine lost over 84 reservations in one day's time due to the cancellation of classes by a local college. We want to make sure that businesses that otherwise would be thriving and doing well make it through this pandemic that we are enduring. We want to make sure that their employees make it through this pandemic. And when this crisis is over, we want those employees to be able to come back to work at those small businesses. If we do not act to help the small business sector, I predict that we will see massive layoffs and inordinate number of small businesses shuttering their doors. They simply won't be able to survive. So, as Senator Rubio said, what our plan would do is provide a federally guaranteed loan to a small business to help that business maintain payroll for its employees and other customary expenses such as utilities. At the end of the period of time, probably around 6 or 8 weeks, the loan could be forgiven if it has been used to sustain those workers. Now, we put in restrictions so that the loan can't be used to give pay raises to the owners, for example, or to increase profits, or to boost the benefits for shareholders. Most of these small businesses, of course, don't have shareholders. It is intended to ensure that employees can make it through this period, that the small business can make it through this period, and that when this crisis passes, they can reunite, and we will still have vibrant Main Street businesses employing millions of Americans. And that's the concept that we're working hard on.
Yes.
Please.
I can pick just one. I know you guys are still working out some details, but broadly, I want to make sure we're characterizing this correctly. You're looking at loans that could later be grants if businesses meet certain requirements, and how do you define the small businesses that you're looking for in law?
Can I handle the second one first? There's already an existing definition of small business under the SBA regulations.
Yes.
And I'll ask Susan to add to this component, but it's not loans that could be. They will become grants if you used it for payroll and customary business. If you used it for some other purpose, then it'll transition into the equivalent of what's now called an impact loan. But listen, the overwhelming majority of the people that are going to seek these out are going to use it for purposes of paying their employees and keeping, their rent or their lease or their mortgage up to date so they don't get evicted. Because if we don't prevent that, then it's going to spread into the real estate market as well. But yes, every penny that they borrow and use for purposes of keeping people employed, they will not have to pay back.
And anticipating your next question, the estimate from the Treasury is that this would be about a $300 billion program.
Can you just address, so some of you have told us you're really concerned about the second stimulus package that is about to pass because of the weight it places on small businesses. Does what you're proposing fix that issue as well?
We believe that what we've proposed will really be of extreme benefit to our small businesses. Some of the family leave provisions that are in the bill that we've just approved, and I voted for it, are difficult to administer. And for reasons that I don't understand, they do not apply to very large businesses, those over 500 employees. So I think that our proposal will be very effective in ensuring that jobs are there for employees once this crisis ends. And that's the purpose of it. We recognize the importance of family leave and medical leave to take care of those who are exposed to the coronavirus or who are caring for someone who's exposed to it. But there are going to be far more people who are affected by this crisis economically than those who are affected from a health perspective. We're concerned about both groups. Let me make that very clear.
Could the loan be used to pay some of that?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're using it for payroll, so a real world example. Someone, obviously this requirement now goes into law when it's signed, so there might be a gap in time, but either way, if you let's say you have 10 employees and you can't operate or they're quarantined, and you use the money from the loan to pay their salaries for that period of time, it's forgiven. So the answer is yes, that they will have access to funds that will allow them to keep their payroll for around, we estimate a period of about 6 weeks, whether or not they avail themselves of the potential, tax system advance that the other system contemplates. And if that's the case, then they could, that's why the theory is that if they're using the tax benefit for some portion of it, it could actually extend their ability to keep their employees on payroll. Obviously, that'll depend on the business.
Paul?
Forgive me if you addressed this. My social distancing was being late. How do you determine when this is over? And either for this program or the other programs, like what is the tripwire for knowing we're out of the crisis?
First of all, the program would be retroactive till March 1st. And right now, we're looking at a June 30th end. But obviously, if, in fact, the crisis hasn't passed by then, it could conceivably be extended. But those are the parameters that we're looking at right now.
But it'll give us a baseline. Now we know what we're dealing with because now we know how many businesses there are. We have a baseline to build on. That just becomes a function of extending it and providing the money for it. as far as your question of when we know the crisis is over, I mean, that we're uncharted territory. We've never shut down our economy for a public health rationale the way we're doing right now. So if you talk to epidemiologists, they would tell you we're watching China, because they're going to restart their economy, and it could lead to a second bump of infections, which could lead to further shutdowns. The answer is, we know this will be in place and provides certainty for a 6 to 8 week period for some employer. And, you know, we'll have to address the future down the road. But right now, we're just trying to get as much help as possible out there to not get people laid off and not have small businesses closing. Yes, ma'am.
Senator, I wanted to ask you about something that's happening in your home state. I'm sure you'd want to respond to. There's been some pretty drastic images of people gathered on the beaches of Florida. Is it appropriate that those beaches remain open?
Well, they've been closed in terms of after a certain time, and local authorities have each pursued it differently. Unfortunately, this coincided with spring break, which made it more complicated. I think the hardest thing we're dealing with here is we are a highly individualistic society, and we're trying to convince Americans that we have to do something that may not be of direct benefit to you, but is of direct benefit to everyone. And obviously that's always a challenge. And for the overwhelming majority of Americans, I mean, all you have to do is step out in the street anywhere, and you'll see that people are understanding that. But you're always going to have people that don't think it's going to, you know, impact them. You're 25 years old, you're healthy, people like me don't get hurt by this. Well, number one, we don't know that. We're seeing a spike in cases among young people in France and in Germany that's concerning. Because this thing's been around 15 weeks, so to predict how it's going to behave as it moves forward is a risky proposition. But the other is, that's not the point. The point is, right now, the reinfection rate is about 2.5, 2.5. So for every person that gets infected, they're theoretically infecting 2.5 to 3 more people. If you infect enough people, we know that a percentage of them are going to show up at emergency rooms in need of ventilation and ICU beds. If this moves too fast, we're going to overwhelm the healthcare system. And then no one's going to be able to access them. If you have a heart attack, if you have God forbid, a car accident, we will break the system because we will overwhelm it. That is the danger they confronted in China. That's the danger they're confronting in parts of Italy now. And that's the danger we're trying to avoid. And the only way to avoid it is to keep people from being in close contact with other people so we can slow down the infection rate, or as they say, flatten the curve. So explaining that to people ain't easy, you know, but I know everyone's trying.
Andrew?
Forgive me if you've answered this. I also came in late. You have safeguards in place, I'm assuming, so that, you know, businesses that are able to keep operating do not use this to effectively subsidize their payroll. Is that? And how would you do that if that's the case? Well,
and that's one of the items we're working through. There's a desire to build a safeguard like that in. So obviously, how do we craft it so that, I think, to use an example, you know, someone's payroll is $50,000 for 2 months, but they made $150,000, which is even more than what they made last year, because they happen to be in some particular industry that benefits.
Mask manufacturer, you don't want
right.
to subsidize that.
And yeah, and so. That trying to build in language that allows Treasury or the administrators of this to be able to not allow this to be used for that purpose is a universal desire. We have to draft language, and that's one of the pieces that we're working through. How do we define that? But that's certainly not the intent.
When do you see this coming together, time-wise, over the next week?
So I'm going to give the optimistic response to that. We could use some optimism right now. Obviously, we've completed action now on the House passed bill. This is a third bill. There are 3 separate task forces that are contributing to it, including our task force, which Senator Rubio is heading. And we hope to get language together tomorrow morning. And start sharing it more widely and vetting it. We're talking to people on both sides of the aisle. There's no reason why this should be a partisan exercise. And in fact, I would say if we cannot come together in a bipartisan way to form a response to such a serious threat to our public health and our economy, then shame on us. And I believe that we can come together. So I anticipate optimistically that we will stay here until this work is done on the third bill. And my hope is that we will pass it sometime this weekend.
Yeah, we're not leaving until we do. That's the first answer. The second is we don't have weeks. I don't know if we even have many days to act on this. People are making decisions at this very moment about what to do with their employees after they pay them tomorrow. So we need to move on this very quickly. I would also say that at least on this portfolio, when it comes to small business, we're blessed to have as a counterpart Ranking Member Cardin, who is one of the easiest and most cooperative people to work with, a very professional, understands this very well. And many of these proposals build on the core of a proposal that we had already been working with him and Chairwoman Velasquez on, and we're hoping to make part of the first package. The biggest difference between this one and a week ago is that one was $50 billion, just to show you how fast this has moved and the magnitude of it.
No, time for one more, guys.
Because we have to go write a bill.
Are you talking to Senator Cardin now, though? Like right now, as you're doing this?
I just talked to him right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I did, and with the staff, and obviously we got to get our house in order on our end, you know. But the general concept here of allowing the federal government to step forward and get cash into the hands of small businesses as defined by statute and rule quickly so they can keep people on payroll is an idea that we had, what they call Four Corners Agreement, the ranking member and the chairwoman in the House, the ranking member and myself in the Senate. As I said, the biggest difference now is just the magnitude of it. And in some ways, I guess we would probably be revisiting this anyway, given how fast the events have moved in the last 7 days. So, but we're building on what we had already discussed, and I think we can make, at least on this portion of this, I'm optimistic we can make a lot of progress because of that.
Let me just add one data point that underscores the urgency for acting on our portion of this new package. In the state of Maine, in the last 3 days, there were more claims for unemployment compensation than in all of March of last year. 3 days. And that shows that businesses are already feeling the cash flow problems, seeing declining revenues, losing customers, and being forced to lay off their employees. That's why we feel so strongly that we must act, and we must act immediately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Impressive spacing here, too, by the way.
Yeah, better than ours.
Really good question, but this isn't in lieu of the $1,000 check that the administration's
Right.
talking about, right?
That's the
And then
difference.
expanded UI would be like on top of that as well, right?
Yeah.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here at Golden State Times. If you liked our coverage, make sure you subscribe and you click that notification bell. Republican senators are working out the small business stimulus bill to help out small businesses recover and be able to pay their employees while nobody's allowed to work. So then that way, when everything goes back to normal, hopefully in the near future, then businesses will be able to open and hopefully within the next couple of weeks after that, be able to go back to almost normal and then normal within the next couple of months. So that is what they're trying to do. That's their idea, is to try to make sure that they are able to save all of these businesses from them going under, because no one's allowed to go outside, no one's allowed to go work, and social distancing and all that stuff. So if you found it useful, make sure you give it a thumbs up and you share it on social media. Share it on Twitter, on Facebook, on all of those social media sites. A lot of people need to see this because they need to know that they're trying to do something, but who knows how long it's going to take and who knows how the bill is actually going to look towards the end. So when it gets to President Trump's desk, we'll have a good idea of that. So share this live stream, share this video on social media, give it a thumbs up. And if you missed any of our previous videos, it should be coming up on your screen. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Gold State Times. We're keeping everyone up to the second informed on everything that is going on in politics. So make sure you follow us at Gold, not Golden, Gold State Times on Twitter. And visit our website, goldenstatetimes.com. Again, that's goldenstatetimes.com.